tears in your eyes, and I ask myself, oh why? My heart is broken cause I see my people dying. Children in the street know what to go. So confused, I don't know what to do to keep my faith from falling. I need you now to help me.
What I am proposing and what by God's grace we are going to do, we are going to implement the research that has already been done and presented to the government of Liberia since the year 2014-2015 for the development of the small and medium enterprises. The second plank is by providing finance, by financial sector reforms. The government of Liberia budget is bloated for several reasons. One, people need to come to work, and so the government tries to buy cars for them. What does it mean in terms of the purchases of cars? We have been struggling for some time to implement a scheme to buy cars for the public service employees to own their own cars. Financial sector reform will do that. What happens even with corruption when people steal? Most of the time when people steal, they steal to build their own houses. Why does this behavior keep repeating itself? The former vice president of the World Bank and Nigerian Finance Minister Ikonjo Iweala said at the housing conference that we have to use financial sector reforms to create access to finance so that people who are gainfully employed, whether in their own business or whether in a formal sector, even in the informal sector, can be able to take loans and get finances to build their own homes. That will help to reduce a major factor for corruption in government. Most times when people take a government job, they steal to build their homes. Financial sector reform to address that problem. Housing and car finance. SME finance, as I talked about before. Liberia, because of the revenue base, has not been able to finance development in any meaningful way without borrowing and without grants. But the paradigm has changed so much now that governments such as ours, post-HIPIC, have a debt ceiling. We are not really encouraged or allowed to borrow under IMF and World Bank programs. So what is the solution? The solution is to move from donor finance, from debt finance, to market-based financing of infrastructure. What do I mean by that? The Abidjan airport, as a vice president in Citibank, I took part in what is called a BOT, a build, operate and transfer transaction, in which the government gave out a concession to a private investor to design, build the airport, operate it, use all the revenues accruing to that special purpose vehicle in which the government has shares, but in which the debt of that entity was not on the government balance sheet. And Abidjan Airport has been running for almost 20 years. The revitalized and modern airport. This can be done at very commercial basis because it makes money. We can do this for hydropower. Liberia has 9 hydro systems, river systems in this country. Yet we continue to buy energy from the West African power pool, draining our foreign exchange resources. What I'm proposing is using this approach and tapping into funds such as the £12 billion that have been provided and approved by the UK Parliament for private sector investments between British citizens, Americans, and Liberian and other entities that would join in this scheme. We can finance toll roads as is done in Senegal. I'm not speaking theory. What I'm saying to you is that other countries are advancing and developing themselves at a faster rate with a lower level of debt and with a heavy involvement of the citizens in the economic mainstream of these countries. Not just as government employees, but as proud owners of farmland if you are a rural farmer, or if you are an agricultural student, or as an owner of real estate or as owner of shares in various entities. I am proposing that in each of these entities, these PPP ventures, the citizens of the particular counties or locales be given equity so that they can be empowered. The challenge that we face is grinding poverty as the fourth poorest country in the world. The only way that we can reduce poverty is to place wealth giving opportunities in the hands of our citizens through an inclusive market-based model that is able to achieve much more and break the constraints, the financing constraints that the debt model it brings about because of the rentier state economy. So what we have to do, we have to amend the concession framework. We have to focus on sectors like housing. We have to encourage concessions that instead of being a concession with a large labor pool, you should contribute towards the infrastructure for building housing estates that the citizens can own instead of living in a concession house. And as we do that, as people begin to own property, families they can also take this property and use it as a collateral for a business loan to the wife of that home. The Côte d'Ivoire came up with a program for 60,000 houses to be built at a cost of $3 billion US. This is what I'm talking about. The mechanisms are available for access to finance. I'm speaking to you as a banker, an experienced banker and economist, to use the market mechanism as other countries are doing to provide access to finance. As I stand here speaking, we have done a complete assessment with the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in South Africa, looking at the income distribution of formal sector and informal sector workers. And we have a database of 30,000 people who can easily afford the first round of houses, even before we go outside of the formal sector. So I'm not talking theory. I'm talking about financial system reform that brings about, that creates mortgage financing institutions, that creates agricultural financing institutions to really stimulate growth. Can you imagine how many jobs will be created if we have a robust construction program building 60,000 homes along the growth corridors of this country? Ganta, Banga, Habel, Kakata, Harper, etc., etc. Each of these areas are on the growth corridor of the 2030 Vision 2030 because economic activity is being programmed for these areas. And under an administration that, by God's grace, I will head in this country with your support, we plan to ensure rapid urban planning and redrawing of the urban map of these different places, even the capital city. But before we can attack Monrovia, we have to create economic opportunity where a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a farmer can live anywhere in this country with lights, with water, and in a dust-free environment with a mortgage loan or a small and medium enterprise loan to the mother of that home or even to the father of that home to supply, whether you want to transport fruit bunches from the different plantations to the factory, or whether you want to work in the oil palm transforming factory, as in Côte d'Ivoire in the industrial zone. In Côte d'Ivoire, you have tankers, petroleum tankers, transporting palm oil to a tank farm in the Vridi industrial zone, where factories are actually producing these things. So it's not a theoretical thing. It is not a dream. It is a reality. What it requires is the vision of people like Houphouët Boigny and the vision of people like Paul Kagame, and the vision that I have, by God's grace, to expand this economy from a $2 billion economy to a vibrant, inclusive, market-based economy where the financial system opens up, basically breaks down the binding constraint, access to finance being one of the main ones, and empowers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of citizens to have money in their pocket to be able to pay higher school fees, to be able to pay higher health insurance.